Hello and welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host Sharmeen Ali. General Qamar Javed Bajwa, the Chief of Army Staff, made a statement yesterday after the Corps Commanders meeting that terror fight gains won't be wasted to suit vested agendas, which means that the fight against terror, which the Army has given a lot, and the security forces in Pakistan and the military has given a lot of sacrifices for Pakistan to bring about stability in the country. All of those efforts over the last many years are not going to be wasted based on any agenda. He did not specify which agenda exactly he was speaking about when DGISPR spoke about this, but in the light of ongoing events, political events, it's pretty clear that General Bajwa has also said that all institutions need to be on the same page where national security is concerned and to keep stability in the country. So we'll be talking about all of this in our program today. Also, there has been a study released which speaks about the online violence that women journalists have to face, and the study results were pretty startling that 9 out of 10 women journalists have said that online violence has impacted their family lives, and 59 out of 110 said that personal lives and their characters are also targeted, and about 8 out of 10 have said that they have self-censored themselves and they won't show their personal and professional, they won't share their opinions and experiences online because of the harassment and violence that they have to face. So we're going to speak about that with an expert as well. And also, we're going to talk about how the United States has pulled out, now is pulling out formally from the Paris Accords, in which an agreement was made between 200 countries to reduce the current increase in the temperature of the world to 0.5 to 1 degree Celsius, that you will not allow it to increase from 0.5 to 1 degree Celsius. And from 2025, every country has to make a very aggressive policy about how they're going to reduce their carbon emissions, carbon dioxide emissions. Now, the United States under President Obama's policy was due to start reducing emissions by 26 to 28%. Europe has already worked towards reducing 40%, and the UK apparently has done even more work to cut carbon dioxide emissions. So this is a big event in the fight against global warming. And many environmentalists in the United States have criticized this. We'll be talking about this in our program as well today. We will also be talking about how 31 migrant Pakistani workers were found inside a truck at the border of France and Italy. And just due to a routine check, they were found and discovered. And now they've been handed over to Italian authorities. Earlier, 39 Vietnamese workers were also found in an abandoned refrigerated truck in Europe. So the main question here is that why are these migrant workers going overseas under such difficult and harsh conditions, and sometimes which lead to their demise? We'll be talking about that as well. What is the real issue behind this, and how should the countries address this issue that's going on at the moment? So we'll be discussing this as well on our program today. We have with us today in our studios Raja Faisal, who is our regular participant in our program, and he's a senior analyst. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today. Raja Faisal, let's begin with General Bajwa's statement. This is a very timely statement. All sorts of stories are going around politicizing the armed forces, and basically the army has said that in the backdrop of the protests going on in Islamabad right now, that it has to maintain law and order, and that the government can call the armed forces under the Constitution to maintain law and order. And they have done this in the past. They've done this in 2014 when we saw the PTI long march over here. Before that, there was Dr. Tyrol Qadri who brought a long march over here. Every time, regardless of which political party it is, the armed forces have always come to maintain stability. So what are your comments on this?
Sharmeen, it was a very serious moment in the political history of Pakistan, and I think the way it has been controlled, thanks to the government and our institutions as well, that they have acted, very wise at this time. Reason being, if you look at the build-up of this sit-in, before they were coming here, the social media and like, everyone was just, talking about the hawks calls, and the fake news was, being persisted in the society. That said, that, there might be a divide within the institution. The institution, I'm talking about the army. And why? Because they were trying to do it. They were trying to do it. What they were trying to do it is that, the military leadership, they were trying to negate it from the equation of the military, which would have been a disaster. I know this, that on social media everyone was doing this campaign, and I think it was a very good of DGISPR to give that statement, the statement I'm talking about, the day before yesterday's statement. And why? Because it gave a clear message to whoever thought that this might happen. It gave a clear message that the way they are thinking about the things are not that way. And secondly, it was very important. It was very important in a way that Corps Commander Conference at this time is important, because it was to show that every personnel of the army is on the same page,
and that there's very
and
coherence
they
that's
are
there very much
the
there.
institution as a whole is with the government and is ready to extend any help if required to
Yes.
counter any internal threats.
Right.
It is considered as an internal political threat to the political stability of Pakistan, which Pakistan has achieved after so long, and I think it should continue. And the very important thing which was discussed in that CC, Pakistan has gone through a phase of terrorism. Post 9/11, Pakistan's situation was that Pakistan, due to its association with or alliance with the Americans, Pakistan faced war on terror, a direct victim of the terror. Pakistan faced in a way that 70,000 people, they lost their lives, and more than $125 billion of its economy we lost in war on terror.
Yeah, so a lot of blood and sweat has gone into
when we
achieving
are
this.
gaining the economic stability, when we are gaining the political stability, when we have internal peace, and when we are trying to counter our external threats as well, if something pops up within ourselves, then of course we have to be cautious about it. This is not the time that we, somebody would bring whatever the number, and they would state something, and they would get their results as they desire. No, it shouldn't be done like that. This is a country that has more than 200 million people living in it.
Yeah.
It's not about if you bring 60 or 70,000 people and you have a certain goal to achieve and you can achieve it. No,
Yeah.
you would
I think
not be
here
allowed to do it.
also there's been, I think, a matter of, I think it was completely wrongly compared to the protests going on in other parts of the world, because those were popular protests all over the country. This is certain political parties and their workers who are here. They don't represent me. They don't represent all of us necessarily.
Yeah.
So in that light, it's completely wrong to correlate the two things,
Yeah, you take the protests in the Chile, you take the protests that happened in France, you take the protests in the Hong Kong. The dimensions of them protests, they are entirely different.
Yeah.
Even in the Muslim world, they were different.
And this is far from a popular protest.
And this is a country where we have achieved a democracy after long, and that democracy is actually growing itself, rather than let it grow. I mean, the political forces who are considering this government as going against them just because of the political reasons, which is not the case. As long as Pakistan has democracy, I think Pakistan would go ahead, and even the institutions, they know about it.
So, and also in order to move forward, I think all of us in Pakistan, majority would like to see stability so that things can move forward, whatever economic reforms, and this is with any successive democratically elected government. You want to see that the projects they're taking on, they're taken to completion, and that there's the stability for those 5 years. So that is how most stable democracies work.
Recently we did programs on FATF. Remember?
Yeah.
And with FATF, the projection of Pakistan, as India has projected Pakistan, these kind of people, they actually add fuel into it.
Yeah.
The countries which are looking towards Pakistan with the prism of FATF,
Right.
they would, taking this this sit-in as an something to talk about. Why? Because before coming to Islamabad, you already know that they have a militia, and that militia was actually doing the parades and doing the trainings and all of that, and India has been using them footages in their favor, that Pakistan has certain states within its states, which is not the case. And if there is some, then of course they would be countered in Pakistan.
Absolutely. So General Bajwa said that the army stands ready. The army has said that it stands ready to assist national institutions in accordance with the Constitution. And under Article 245 of the Constitution, the government can call on the army to maintain law and order. So that's just a point to clarify. It's not as if, they're supporting one party or the other. Any government can call the army. It's a state institution which supports the democratically elected government.
And then Section 144 can be, implemented, and anyone who's having an unlawful assembly, they can be dealt with.
Absolutely.
Countries has done that, and Pakistan being a democratic country, it should do it.
Yes, and now I'd like to go into another quote of General Bajwa's. He said that he stressed on the need for unity amongst the different organs of the state. He said that while Pakistani armed forces, with support of national institutions and the nation, are fully prepared and committed to thwart all threats, including on the eastern border and LOC, continued cohesion of all national stakeholders on key national issues is essential to defeat inimical forces. So the cohesion of all your institutions and stakeholders is very important at a time like this. We're facing a very tough situation along the line of control with India, and especially with the recent developments that have taken place with the abrogation of Article 370 over there. Since August 5th, things have become more tense, and they've been tense since the Pulwama incident in February. So we all need to be together as a country to make sure that threat is not there for all of us.
I tell you one thing. Pakistan on the eastern border with India and western border with Afghanistan right now is very busy.
Yes.
And Chief of Army Staff, he has highlighted Kashmir issue being very hot issue right now. But we should not be forgetting that we are having a very hot issue on the border of Afghanistan as well. We are trying to, Pakistan is trying to keep calm. Recently in Kabul, Pakistan's mission, they were, being bullied on the road. So road rage was, one of the things they were using to bully Pakistan's mission in Kabul. And there is another thing, that Pakistan being part of a key part of Afghan peace deal, Pakistan has importance on that border as well. On the eastern border, of course, it's a very live border right now. Line of control is very live. And from the western border, we get the ideas that the enemies, they would be staging some sort of clandestine activities, which we have the proofs of in shape of Kulbhushan Yadav as well. That in past these things happened. But now the biggest problem is talking about the institutions. The institutions, what I see as the state institutions, like all of the institutions, including media, they should play their role as well. And I tell you, majority of the media, I would talk about the private media as well, they have been very reasonable, and they have been very responsible during this episode of the sit-in, which is appreciable. Yes, there were a few names which I would not be taking here. I think they need to think about it. Before any political association, a person should have association with the motherland, with the country. your first
and look at the
association should
bigger
be with the
issues.
country.
Absolutely.
You know?
And like you had said earlier, that the DGISPR had said a couple of days earlier on his message that the opposition should understand that the army is an impartial organization, and we believe on the rule of the law and the constitution, and our support is not for one party, but it lies with the democratically elected government. So we have to keep that in mind before throwing accusations around on Twitter and things like that. And it's a very tough role that the army is playing at the moment all over the country, eastern border, western border, like you're saying, and now internal stability.
And let's be very fair.
Yeah, we need to be very responsible about this.
You know, let's be very fair. Army being on the borders, along with that, wherever there is, natural calamity or anywhere where somebody needs help, army is always there.
Yes,
absolutely. If
absolutely.
there are floods,
and
if
the
there are
sacrifices
earthquakes,
they've given huge sacrifices to bring about this stability in the country.
There was a time every day we've been listening names on the media, young men like 25, 23, married and unmarried, they were laying their lives for this nation.
Every day. And in the 2014 Long March, I was hosting the 14th August ceremony at the presidency. And at that time, there was so much army in Islamabad, even more so than now. So, we have to be fair. So it's not partial to any political party.
We need to be fair, and the lives which were laid by them young men, they laid the lives for a better Pakistan. And this Pakistan, if it is getting better now, then why putting hurdles in front of it?
Exactly.
And that's why the institutions, they know it very well. And I think it was very wise of the institutions to act fast.
Absolutely. So now moving forward to the Paris Accord and how the United States is now about to withdraw from the Paris Agreement, and they have actually submitted to the UN a formal letter that they're withdrawing from the Paris Agreement, and that withdrawal comes into effect in 1 year's time, and this is going to be one day after the 2020 elections. And this is something that President Donald Trump has wanted to do, and he had 3 years from when it was signed till now, 2016 till now, for when a country can actually withdraw. And I'd like to add that the United States is the only country that actually is withdrawing from the Paris Agreement right now. And the implications for this are pretty big, because the United States is one of the largest developed countries, and it has its share of greenhouse gas emissions. And the environmentalists in the United States have reacted to this very, very strongly, and a lot of critics have said that this is very irresponsible on President Trump's part. So, sir, what are your comments about this, the United States pulling out of the Paris Agreement?
The only thing that rings in my head is Greta Thunberg, who was, Swedish climate change activist. She said it right. She said, "How dare you?" And I would say the same thing, being a human being living in this world, and if someone is pulling out of such an agreement, which is so important for our generations to come, then I think I should be joining Greta Thunberg, and I should be calling the same thing. How dare you? And it was very odd. Reason being, America being the leading country of the world when it comes to human rights, when it comes to each and everything, whatever initiates, it always initiates from America. And Americans, I mean, not about the American people I'm talking about. I'm talking about the American government right now. They should have thought of it. They should have thought of it for long.
And
Give it a chance.
let me add this girl, Greta Thunberg. She's 13 years old. Or
she's
very
16
young,
years
16 years old. She flew from Sweden to the UN General Assembly in New York. She didn't fly, actually, because she's against the use of air travel. She came by a ship.
She took a boat.
Yes, a boat. And I mean, the fact that this younger generation is so dedicated to stop global warming for their own future, and the principle behind it all is just amazing, that they're willing to take such huge steps at such a young age. So it's an example for everybody.
If you go through the numbers, I mean, from 18th century to 19th century, I think the increase was less than 1%. Then later on, it gradually. Why? Because of the economic boom. Industrial boom, and industries, they were standing up everywhere. Trees were getting cut, and for that, the global warming, it saw a drastic change which is affecting our world. And if we take the UNGA Prime Minister's speech as well, Prime Minister Imran Khan, he started his speech with the first point. The first point he talked about was climate change. You know, why? Because we need to be worried about it. His previous provincial government in KPK revolved around, tsunami tree project, forestation in a big number was done in KPK, and now it is going on in throughout Pakistan. And Pakistan being a very small country, you know, the countries that actually are concerned here, the two major countries are China and America. Why? Because the 40% of the fuel emissions, carbon emissions, and the effect that actually goes towards our climate is done by these two countries.
Yes, and Pakistan and developing countries like Pakistan they have a very small carbon footprint.
Exactly.
And but the effects are the largest in the developing world. Our people get affected the most because of the poverty and the landscape and the temperature.
And they should be accepting this, you know, responsibility. Why? Because being the leading countries in terms of economy, in terms of industry, they should be, you know, they should be held responsible, and they should be feeling responsible for it as well.
Absolutely. Now, the Paris Agreement, it called for pollution cuts for each nation. This is voluntary. They had to come up with their own program for cutting every 5 years their carbon emissions to prevent another 0.5 to 1 degree Celsius rise. And the pollution cuts were due to start in November of 2020, not 2020. So now the climate change is basically caused by coal and the use of coal, oil and gas, right? And it creates greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide. And the 1 degree rise in temperature Celsius started after the 1800s, late 1800s, as you were saying, due to the Industrial Revolution. Now the impact it's had the impact of melting of ice, glaciers, extreme weather events. We're seeing in places which impact the developing world the most, such as you know, extreme weather events, such as where we're seeing very strong winds and storms, very strong storms and droughts.
Tsunamis and Katrinas and
yes.
There was another one, you know, I don't know why they keep on giving the women name to these disasters, but there's another one which is hitting very soon.
Then there's droughts, there's water shortages we're seeing in Pakistan right now. Glacier melts are affecting this country especially, and as far as the water issues are concerned, that is something that's becoming more and more of a serious problem, because, and also with the change in temperatures and rainfall, our agriculture is being affected, and it's changing. So it's a huge impact. And then we look at the West, we look at the United States. There are wildfires right now consuming California. And like you're talking about the hurricanes and things that hit the East Coast and Florida, almost every year you're seeing them now. So it's become a very grave issue.
And
so
one very important thing I want to highlight here, I think the credit must be given to the Western countries. When I say Western countries, I only mean not the American government, but the Europeans. They have acted fast, and they quickly introduced you know, the hybrid cars and these sort of, why? Just to reduce the carbon emissions. And they are introducing electric cars. They are introducing, even now, even Pakistan, I mean, the Science Minister of Pakistan, Fawad Chaudhry, recently I was looking at that news, and I was you know, so happy and hopeful that somebody is working very well, and the things would change in Pakistan in that way as well.
Because electric cars don't cause pollution.
Yeah,
also.
in Pakistan, the largest number of you know, commuting vehicle is used as motorbikes, you know, and the motorbikes, they are causing too much of pollution. And now they would be switched to the electric motorbikes, which is a very good step forward.
That's a very positive step.
Why? Because it would be cheap, and the majority of the population is using the motorbikes, and it's a very good step forward.
So it's a very good alternative. President Trump's reasoning is that he says that America staying with the Paris Agreement, he says that it's a massive wealth transfer from America to other nations. So that's why he's pulling out of it to, make for the sake of his economy. And Secretary of State Mike Pompeo made a statement saying that in international climate discussions going forward, this is their plan. We will continue to offer a realistic and pragmatic model backed by a record of real world results showing innovation and open markets. Showing innovation and open markets lead to greater prosperity, fewer emissions, and more secure sources of energy. So he said this in his statement. So innovation would mean that the choice of people to get their electric cars, but the US public, if you know them well enough, they're used to their big SUVs, their giant Jeeps and all, which are gas guzzling.
Big trucks.
Big trucks. And in Europe, you see those little tiny electric cars. So the cultures are very different. To bring about that cultural change is going to be very hard with the American consumer.
I think the concerns with the Trump administration, they were since long. Even during their campaign, the election campaigns, they have been talking about it, that if we comply with whatever the previous government has signatured along with the Chinese, if they comply with that, then of course they would be losing so many jobs. So just to create jobs and just to have the economy running in a way that keeps on creating jobs, they just want to have it.
Right.
And what their point is that if we keep on staying in this agreement, then we would be losing our economy in a way that the industries, few of the industries, of course, they have to shut it down, and the other countries, they would be putting on. But of course, the industries that are the most carbon emission, the industries that cause the carbon emissions, they would be shut down in America. And just for that reason, US government right now is thinking about, get out of here, and we would have whatever we want. And along with that, as you have mentioned, that they already have the plan that they would be introducing the newer technologies. That is only about giving an option. It's not about
it's
legislating.
not national legislation or policy.
It's not
so
part of
let's
your
get into the
legislation.
criticism that he's faced now by people like critics in the United States and also New York City former Mayor Michael Bloomberg. They have said that he is what he's done is a reckless failure of leadership. And the Sierra Club, which is an environmental organization, has said that Donald Trump is the worst president in history for our climate and our clean air and water. And long after Trump is out of office, his decision to withdraw the United States from the Paris Agreement will be seen as a historic error. So the environmentalists are really taking this hard. They're really taking this as something really negative as a decision by the United States.
Rightly so. Reason being, I think the decision should not have been taken because America being one of the leading countries in terms of economy and in terms of industry, it should take the responsibility. And as you know, that when America is in an organization or in an agreement, that matters a lot. Reason being, United Nations, it exists in New York, and of course that's where everything starts. And when more than 200 countries that are signatories of that agreement, and I think they shouldn't have taken this decision. And when it comes to criticism, there are criticisms, further criticisms down the line, in which people are saying that it is highly irresponsible of Trump administration to think that America is actually sending dollars out of the country. This is not the case. I mean, being the human beings throughout the world, they would be sharing the responsibility, the equal responsibility.
Absolutely, because it's a global issue.
Exactly.
One part produces the carbon dioxide, it affects another part of the world.
Exactly.
So it's a global issue.
Even the countries if the countries like Pakistan and if the countries like smaller economies, if they can do a lot, then why not America?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us, Raja Faisal, again on our program. Now we're going to be talking about online violence that women journalists have to face in Pakistan. Pakistan is known to be one of the most hostile countries for journalists, and as far as women are concerned, it's supposed to be one of the most dangerous. We are going to speak to Sadaf Khan, who is going to join us on Skype about this report that has just been issued about how, in what ways and to what extent do Pakistani journalists, women, get exposed to online violence. Thank you for joining us, Sadaf, on our program.
Thank you, Jay.
Sadaf, would you just share with me a little bit of, now we're talking about online violence against female journalists. Would you like to just explain a little bit what is online violence exactly?
Yes, so the way online violence is understood is pretty diverse. It's all those behaviors that come to affect women in different ways. It can range from harassment to blackmail, to hacking, to doxing. For the sake of the study that we're discussing today, we had left it open to the female journalists to define how they see online violence. And saw it as online harassment, hate speech, blackmail, identification and basically the leakage of their personal identifiers and their personal data, privacy breaches. So the actual definition of how online violence is seen is dependent on how people perceive it. So any behavior that makes them feel uncomfortable, that makes them feel threatened, and that makes them kind of pause and change their behavior at times, that comes within the category of online violence.
Right, so the numbers and the results of your study are pretty surprising. I wouldn't say surprising because we all know it's there, but they're pretty high. I mean, 9 out of 10 women have said that the online violence, women journalists have said that online violence has impacted their family, and their personal lives and character have been targeted, and they've said that they've had to self-censor. So would you like to just get a little bit into these results?
Yes, so we were not surprised by the fact that 9 out of 10 women journalists have been targeted, but we have not previously thought of this whole phenomena coming to affect their family and friends. So the fact that such a high number, almost 90%, of the respondents said that their families get affected and their friends get affected, it's both alarming and obviously it has repercussions for how women journalists are conducting their professional duties. Around 8 out of 10 journalists said that they had considered online violence as a factor before they decide if they even want to share their own work online. 6 out of 7 women journalists don't even share their personal opinions online, let alone political opinions, for the fear of getting hate speech and getting trolled, and especially considering how they think their families would be affected. When it comes to families, we have to think of it in the context of the culture that we live in. Women, when they get abused, when they get targeted, get very sexualized kind of abuses, targeting their characters, their honor, and obviously within our society, these are no-go areas. And when there's a public discussion that brings a woman's or a girl's character into question, or she is facing abuses of the worst kind, which are graphic in nature, which are sexual, the first advice that the families would give would be to back off. And obviously, leaving that space doesn't bode so well for their own professional development. When their male counterparts are able to share it, they're able to have discussions and debates in the public space without facing all these challenges.
Yes, and we're seeing recent events also with the particular personality from the entertainment industry who's facing a lot of harassment because of recent events of online behavior. It's extremely sad when these ladies have to go through this. And as far as journalists are concerned, Ms. Sadaf, what is your opinion now? What recourse does a female journalist have when she's facing these kind of threats? I mean, what should they do?
Yeah, so that's the challenging part because obviously self-preservation is always paramount. So before doing anything, journalists need to make the judgment call. They need to um, They need to deduce whether a certain hate, whether certain trolling is just harmless in terms of physical sense, or does it have the capacity to escalate into the physical space. If it is just online, then they can choose to either ignore, which most of them do, but reporting to platforms, first of all. So if you're getting hate speech, if you're getting abuses, most of these things are in direct violation of Twitter and Facebook and other platforms' community policy. So just reporting them can be the first step in getting those people offline. Then, for the sake of their own mental health, blocking these people. And if they persist and if the behavior turns into the more criminal side, for example, continuous stalking, use of blackmail, revelation of identifiers, identity information, then they have to go to the law enforcement agencies. But there's also something that we as community of journalists can do. Oftentimes what happens is that even when one of our colleagues is facing harassment and we can see everything happening on our Twitter timelines or our Facebook comments, we choose to kind of message them privately, talk to them, lend our support in private spaces, but we try to stay away from that ugliness that is happening in the public sphere. So what happens is that the journalist who's facing all that hate does have support individually, but in that public space, she's kind of left alone. So kind of come joining our forces, becoming allies, and bringing our support to the public spaces, calling people out when they're being nasty, rude, mean, or essentially abusing a journalist. And this doesn't just go for the female colleagues, but our male colleagues as well. Unless they join support publicly, unless they come to support their own colleagues publicly, this problem is going to be extremely difficult to tackle, and it has repercussions on how journalism industry and our media industry takes shape, and what kind of narratives and voices we can bring to the front.
Right. So there are certain types of online harassers or whatever you may like to call them, the perpetrators of this kind of violence. They're particularly persistent. If you, like you're saying, some journalists or women on social media, they will ignore somebody for a long time or they will block them. But then the same person is known to kind of show up on another platform, and then if they're blocked there, they'll show up on another platform. Then they change their accounts and they keep changing the identity of their account. So some of these people are particularly persistent, and these harassment cases have gone on for years in some of these cases.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. A number of the journalists who were respondents for our research also said that they personally know somebody for whom this online harassment escalated into the physical spaces as well. So when something like that happens, when you can see that somebody is coming back again and again and again, then going to law enforcement becomes very important. What we found was that even when women were facing serious harassment online and continuous harassment online, most of them were reluctant to go to the FIA, to go to the cybercrime wing of the FIA, who's responsible for regulating and criminalizing the cyberspace. And when they don't go to the law enforcement agencies, obviously they are left with limited options to fight back. I do understand their reluctance to go to the law enforcement. Obviously, there is a certain trust deficit. The law is fairly new; it's still being tested out. But till it improves, that is the legal recourse that we have available. And the only way to improve it is implementation, is to force the law enforcement agency to kind of try and implement it, and then obviously report on it as well. That's the
Absolutely.
advantage that we have within the media community. Once you have reported the crime to the law enforcement agency, you also have the power to kind of report on their performance, how they followed up the case, what happened, what didn't happen. So yeah, testing out that option becomes very important in cases where the perpetuator is particularly persistent, and there's danger that it might escalate to the physical space.
Right. Thank you so much, Ms. Sadaf Khan, for joining us and giving your feedback on this matter. Indeed, online harassment and violence against women journalists is very ubiquitous in Pakistan. A lot of women have complained about it, and there are cybercrime laws which exist to prevent it. So I would advise any of these women to go and contact the FIA's cybercrime wing. The phone number is there when you search it up online, and they do take action. So now coming to the story about the 31 Pakistani migrant workers who were found in a truck at the border of France and Italy. We're going to talk about this. These workers, they cross over borders and they go to foreign countries due to the fact that they're looking for employment. And in Pakistan's case, in many countries' case, migrant workers they're attempting to escape war or religious and ethnic persecution, poverty, harsh economic conditions. These are the reasons why most migrant workers go abroad to try and gain their livelihood or escape difficult conditions in their own countries. Most of them don't wish to have to face these harsh conditions and leave behind their homes and their families, but they are forced to do so. In Pakistan particularly, migrants are typically categorized as economic migrants, and they're from rural and small towns, and often they are smuggled into foreign countries because they're given the visions of dreams of wealth and adventure waiting for them. And in many cases, when they get to the country, to the destination, that doesn't actually exist, and they have to face very, very harsh conditions. Recently also, 39 migrants from Vietnam were found dead inside an abandoned refrigerated truck in the United Kingdom. It's a very big tragedy indeed, and this has happened in the past as well with migrant workers from different parts of the world. And it's very unfortunate because such people are just trying to go to a better place in order to provide for their families back home or to escape some sort of a war or tough condition in their own country or religious and ethnic persecution. Now we're going to get an idea about the stock market situation and how the stock market performed today. We have with us online Mr. Salman Naqvi. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome.
Mr. Naqvi, can you please give us an update about how the stock market performed today?
Today or for last few sessions, market is doing very well. It is improving. The trend is positive, and it is supported by few positive news from economic front. Like IMF review is the delegation of IMF is satisfied with the Pakistani performance, as well as macroeconomic indicators like trade deficit, current account deficit. They are on improving trend and they are under control. Currency is under control, as well as interest rate is looking under pressure. It will be definitely decline in the upcoming monetary policy. So these are the few important and things because of which market is on improving trend, as well as on political front, the ongoing movement against the government looks like it is diffused. So these are the major reasons. That's why market is on improving trend.
Right. So how many points did it improve today?
Today, market was improved around 100 points, but I think in last few sessions, it is improved by at least 5 to 7% in just 2-3 sessions. So it is very good performance, and it looks that the government economic policies are very good, very supporting for the market.
Right, and this also shows sort of the investors' confidence that things will sort themselves out as far as the political situation is concerned, and sort of a confidence of the investors that the economic policies by the current government will be successful, because markets are usually indicative of what investors are thinking ahead about.
Definitely, definitely. You're absolutely right. And the investors has full confidence over government's economic policies, economic performance, as well as political stability. And the uncertainty which we were forecasting in last week, I think now investors are satisfied, and market will further improve, inshallah, in next few sessions.
Right, and the stabilization of the rupee, has that also been a factor in improving
Yeah,
the market situation?
currency is stable as well as reserves are stable, growing day by day. And the macroeconomics indicators like current account deficit, the trade deficit, they are contracting and they are coming under control. That's why the IMF delegation is very much satisfied with the economic performance, and we are hoping well that they will issue the next tranche, IMF tranche, within the next few days. So all these things are looking very good, and especially on the interest rate scenario, which is looking very weak. In the last PIB auction, the yield declined by 1%. So, which is very supporting for the market as well as the investors and the whole economy.
Thank you so much, Mr. Salman Naqvi, for joining us and giving your feedback on the stock markets. So things are looking positive again on the stock markets front, and investors are showing confidence about the government's economic policy, because the stock market always predicts what's going to happen in the future, and investors' confidence is reflected in that. So good news indeed, and also investors are showing that they're not worried about the political stability and situation in the country. So that's a very positive development for Pakistan at the moment. That's all for today's program. So I'd like to say bye-bye from me, Sharmeen Ali, and our team at Newsroom. See you next time.